A new era for Swiss banks. That's right. Two new leaders announced in just under 2 weeks for Switzerland's two biggest banks. Today, we focus on the digital strategy ahead for UBS under this man, Ralph Hamers, who's said to have revolutionized ING with his digital prowess. Where does this leave Credit Suisse, which has opted for homegrown Swiss talent to lead them into the future? And also today, FINMA slaps restrictions on Julius Baer for serious mistakes in money laundering breaches. Hello, I'm Hannah Wise, and welcome to this special programme on the future of Swiss banks. Well, UBS has what many are touting as a digital motivator as their new CEO. Dutch-born Ralph Hamers has a proven track record for transformation. But he's arriving at Switzerland's biggest bank in times of turmoil. Two lawsuits, one in France over tax fraud and another in the US over mortgage securities, will take up his time, especially when he will want to focus on one of the biggest challenges facing banking globally today, digitalisation. Olivia Chang looks back at how Ralph Hamers has used technology to transform.
Hamers has invested heavily in technology since taking over at the helm of ING since 2013. The bank has created labs to develop applications of artificial intelligence, machine learning and data analytics. And it has a venture capital arm also focused on fintech. As a result, ING has undergone a fundamental shift from a brick-and-mortar lender to a platform-based model of banking, one delivered on various digital devices. One focus has been payments, a market that is evolving quickly as EU regulators push to open it up. ING has introduced a slew of mobile apps to make payments easier for clients. And in 2018, it acquired a 75% stake in Payvision, a platform offering more than 80 payment methods, including MasterCard and Visa. And it doesn't stop there. One of ING's biggest tech successes is an artificial intelligence platform to help its traders pick bonds to buy and sell. The system, named after a samurai sword, was recently spun off this year and is now London-based, a standalone company. Hamers also oversaw the launch of a mobile-only retail bank in the Philippines from scratch. And ING is pioneering the use of blockchain in areas like agriculture and trade finance. All of this helps explain why Hamers has landed the top job over at UBS. It is also a sign of the Swiss bank's future aspirations.
Well, let's dig right into that. Hague Simonian financial journalist and Adriano Lucatelli, who is CEO of Descartes Finance, a digital asset manager, both join me in the studio tonight. Is this the case for Hamers' employment, do you think, a digital prowess? Or is it that he's just simply available? Hague, can I start with you?
No one was expecting him to leave ING. The appointment was a surprise. The timing was a surprise, although there's been more rumours recently about Sergio Ermotti, the current UBS CEO, moving on. Digitalisation is certainly an important theme for the future. The two banks are rather different, but the two countries they come from aren't that different. Both relatively small, both highly banked, both suffering from ultra-low or indeed negative interest rates where bank margins are seriously under pressure.
Do you agree with this, Adriano? I mean, is he a good pick for Switzerland?
I guess so. UBS needed an outsider, probably even from the outside of Switzerland. He's not from England or the US, which is good too. He comes, as I agree with Hague, from a similar country, the Netherlands. It's a courageous move, but a good move.
So what can he actually do for UBS when it comes to digital transformation? I mean, you're a digital asset manager. What are the challenges here?
I think Switzerland is, apart from being overbanked, overly traditional. It's going to be tough for him to change UBS completely. But it's enough just to start somewhere. He has a good track record in the retail business, in monoliners like mortgages, payments. That's easy to digitize. This is the 101 of digitization. The challenge will be to digitize wealth management, and there I cannot make a call right now.
I want
the
to dig into...
juries will be out.
I want to dig into all of those topics in a bit more detail, but just let's pick up, first of all, Hague, with the difficulties facing somebody who's got to come in and change a very old, very traditional Swiss bank.
and a relatively successful Swiss bank, we should argue. It's not like the bank is on its knees and therefore change is easier to implement. UBS, as we know, had troubles during the financial crisis. Oswald Grubel came over from Credit Suisse, or after retirement, to stabilise the ship. Sergio Eramotti then came and stayed significantly longer than some might have expected to get the boat back on course. So yes, the time has come for change, for innovation in difficult market circumstances and in very unpredictable markets. Clearly, Hammer's background in digitalisation has been one of his most important, if not his most important, calling card here. And that's presumably the way the bank is going to go. But of course, closing branches and firing people is never the most popular approach.
So what does this tell us then about how UBS is going to go forward when it comes to strategy? Because both Credit Suisse's new head and Hammer's, they are both retail bankers. And hang on a minute, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought it was all about wealth management. What do you think?
Yes, this is going to be a challenge. There are retail bankers, yes. And as I said before, it's to digitize retail banking is not easy, but much easier than wealth management, which is a different league. It's much more complex. So time will tell if he's going to survive. And don't forget, private bankers are strong animals. I mean, alpha animals. And they...
Will he face resistance then?
He will face resistance, absolutely, because people will not give up, or the client advisors will not give up that easily the client franchise. So, well, it's not going to be his direct job. For that, he has Mr. Khan, but still, he will face challenges. The system, I'm not so quite sure if UBS is that strong as we all believe. I think they need change, and the share price is an example of the situation. Nobody believes them that they can grow, that the franchise is strong enough.
Well, absolutely. One of the big things that he will have to face is the share price. It didn't change much under Sergio Eramotti over his entire 9 years. How will, I mean, isn't that the ultimate challenge rather than the digitalisation? Isn't it just keeping the shareholders and the share price
I think the two things go hand in hand, because obviously the share price should, in theory, at least reflect the success and the profitability of the bank. I think in terms of implementing change, I'd perhaps be a little bit more optimistic in the sense that, or more positive, in the sense I think to some extent he's pushing against an open door. It's not that UBS has suddenly decided digitalisation exists as of today. This is a process that has already been going along quite a long time. The bank has severely cut back on its workforce. It's adopted a policy that was initially called under the euphemism of industrialization, but which basically meant increasingly trying to robotize, automate tasks that were previously performed by human beings, and generally in high-cost Switzerland. They've to some extent been outsourced, they've to some extent been automated. So this isn't exactly entirely new.
But Switzerland has been kind of avoiding it. They don't compare well when it comes to digitalisation.
No, Switzerland has been a little bit the protected species here, because the feeling was the Swiss customer expected a certain level of service, perhaps had to be gradually educated and gradually transformed. And I think the same applies actually to the private banking space, where the customer isn't exclusively Swiss. I think there the still wealthy, but not ultra-wealthy private banking customer is going to find themselves increasingly commoditized. That's been happening anyway to some extent, but that will accelerate, whereas the previous hand-to-hand service will be reserved for the people flying first class, so to speak.
Adriano, how will the 60,000 employees be feeling about this? They've woken up, or maybe they heard it last night when it broke late, that they've got a new boss who is going to change things. How unsettling is that as a banker?
Well, I think he has a good track record, so people will be curious and will give him all the support he needs. He will face, as I said, some challenges in private banking, but I wouldn't be too nervous. After 9 years, it was about time that there's a new leadership with new ideas, new motivation, and it's clear UBS has to do something.
Is it significant that he's not from Switzerland, though?
I think so, yeah. It's a good move, because an outsider can do things that that the small, if you are living in a small country, you're a Swiss, you are running a big Swiss bank, you have too many dependencies. So an external guy can really change things without having too much of a legacy.
But have they gone far enough? I mean, Group CEO Sabine Keller-Buser was seen as very qualified.
Indeed, she was. I think the interesting parallel here, some people have suggested parallels with Credit Suisse, where we've just had a change of top management too. But I think actually the most interesting, maybe I'm too positive, parallel is actually with Nestlé, where if you recall, 2-3 years ago now, Mark Schneider came in as the totally surprise outsider, Nestlé, which had always had internally, and came as a fresh pair of eyes, a fresh pair of hands to shake up the ship, to revise the portfolio. And if you see what's happened to Nestlé's share price since his arrival, then, I mean, UBS, I think, would be happy with half that much increase.
OK, you mentioned Credit Suisse, one of you earlier, and Iqbal Khan. He jumped ship from Credit Suisse to UBS. I'm wondering, I mean, that whole scenario was under pretty dark cloud. It led to the resignation of Tidjane Thiam, CEO of Credit Suisse. Do you think that that whole scenario has impacted Iqbal Khan's position to step in to wear Motti's shoes? Hey.
Yes, perhaps. I mean, I don't know Mr. Khan. He's one of the few I don't know at all, so I can't really have a read on him. If he was as superficial to think that it was that easy, then it most certainly has snookered his strategy. I would like to give him credit for being slightly more sophisticated in his thinking and less superficial than what you've just set out. Who knows?
All right, let's kind of wrap things up for the moment. If I could ask both of you, I'll start with you, Adriano. I mean, what are the 3 top things that Mr. Hamers is going to have to do as soon as he arrives in November?
Re-energize the working force, digitization, and a bit more openness, open banking creativity.
Haig.
Costs, lots have been done on costs, but it can never stop, and there's more that needs to be done. Digitization for sure, and there are still some legal legacy issues, particularly in France, that need to be addressed.
OK, and that could overshadow the beginning of his tenure, certainly.
It depends how the French situation plays out. Almost certainly it's not going to play out very quickly, because legal wheels grind slowly, as we know.
When I mentioned the dark cloud, there is also another bank under a bit of a dark cloud today. That is Julius Baer. It's been slapped with restrictions and an audit because of money laundering mistakes. Now, this is involved in 2 scandals, one in Venezuela and one with FIFA. It's quite unusual for FINMA to name the bank in this situation. There's also no fine in this situation. What do you make of this? Is this a governance issue?
Yeah, of course it's a governance issue. I mean, I asked myself what the board did and how come they let Boris Collardi run the business as he obviously did. I think it's a good move by FINMA to name shame, because it must have been really serious that they came out that's wrong.
Were they just not cautious enough? Because I was looking back at the timing, and this all dates back to just following the crisis, and maybe banks, you know, in 2009 onwards, in the few years after the financial crisis, were too keen to make deals, perhaps, and maybe made mistakes.
Yeah, if you work in the global private banking space, cross-border, you always will have certain issues, because it's really difficult to run a compliance issues. But in this case, I think it went too far.
And how will Julius Baer be able to come back from this, do you think, Haig?
I think Julius Baer has got a new CEO. He's much less known than Boris Collardi. He seems, on paper at least, to be less charismatic. That was one of Collardi's...
Is that important?
I think it is to a certain extent in private banking. I think not with, sadly, clients like you or me, but with the really big clients, you do need to show your face. You do need to have the CEO wheeled in and to be lunched and glad-handed to a certain extent. I think clients in that sort of level expect it.
But so isn't the sea change that we're seeing potentially the end to all of that?
It depends. I think big clients are always going to be entertained. I think big clients are always going to be flattered and have things done for them within, obviously, the regulatory limits. I think that will never change. I think that's what we expect from private banking to some extent.
OK, and Adriano, I mean, this sea change, we're seeing 3 very big stories at, 3 very big banks here in Switzerland. Do you see Swiss banking changing in the future?
It is about to change. We see it right now, and I think it's a good thing that Switzerland joins the world in modern digitized finance, reaching out and not just focus on Switzerland and getting clients into Switzerland, but actually reaching out. The name is good, the country is stable, so embracing the new private banking or global banking era is the best thing that can happen to us.
And you don't see it as a threat then to fintech?
Not at all.
I'm sure you don't. But OK, Adriano Lucatelli and Higgs Murian, thank you both very much indeed for joining us for this special programme. And of course, you can get involved in all of today's news by checking out our social media pages. We are available on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and LinkedIn. Whatever your comments, it's always great to hear from you. And of course, the address is on your screen now. Everything is available on our website. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.